It was a scorching afternoon in the dusty town of Elms Ridge. The kind of day where the sun itself seemed angry, baking the earth till it cracked like old bone. In the center of the town square, a wooden gallows stood tall and grim, casting a long shadow across the crowd that had gathered. The people were restless, whispering, pointing, judging. And there she stood, Evelyn Grace Carter, her wrists bound in rope, her long brown hair tangled from the rough hands that had dragged her here. Her once ivory dress was now smeared with dust and blood. And yet, there was something defiant in her eyes. The sheriff stood off to the side, hat low, chewing on a piece of straw, unwilling to meet her gaze. Her in-laws, stern, cold, and burning with self-righteous fury, stood front and center. She brought shame to the Carter name, shouted Margaret Carter, her mother-in-law, her face twisted with grief and hatred. She poisoned my son. The words struck the air like gunfire, echoing through the silence that followed. Evelyn shook her head, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. I didn't kill him, she whispered hoarsely. You know I didn't. He was sick for weeks. Silence. Roared Henry Carter, the patriarch, his cane slamming against the ground. You think we'll believe the likes of you? A poor girl who married into wealth and turned on her husband when he fell ill. You took his life for his inheritance. The crowd murmured, torn between pity and disgust. In a small town like Elms Ridge, rumors traveled faster than bullets. No one knew the truth, and perhaps no one cared to know. The law was whatever the Carters declared it to be. They were powerful, respected, and cruel enough to make fear look like justice. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest as she was forced up the creaking wooden steps of the gallows. The noose swayed lazily in the wind, waiting for her. Her breath hitched. This wasn't supposed to be her end. She was supposed to grow old on the ranch with Daniel, the man who had once promised her safety and love. But Daniel was gone now, taken by a fever that medicine couldn't cure, and with his death, her world had turned into hell. As the hangman adjusted the rope around her neck, she whispered a prayer, not for herself, but for the truth to find her somehow. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted peace. The sheriff raised his hand to quiet the crowd. But before he could signal the hangman, a deep voice called out from the edge of the crowd, steady, commanding, impossible to ignore. Hold it right there. Heads turned. A tall man on horseback rode forward. The kind of man who didn't belong to anyone's story until he made it his own. His hat shadowed his face, but the way he carried himself, calm, dangerous, certain, made the crowd part instinctively. His horse, a dark chestnut stallion, pawed the ground, snorting at the tension in the air. The men dismounted slowly, boots crunching against the dirt as he stepped toward the gallows. Who are you? Henry. Carter barked, gripping his cane tighter. The men didn't answer right away. He looked up at Evelyn, his gaze unreadable, then turned to the sheriff. This hanging, he said quietly, ain't lawful. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. The Carters got proof. The stranger cut in, his tone sharp as a whip. Or just power? His eyes flicked to the rope around Evelyn's neck. There's a difference. The crowd stirred again, whispers rippling through them like wind over wheat. The Carters didn't take kindly to being challenged, especially not by an outsider. You best leave town, stranger, Margaret hissed. This is our family's business. The men ignored her. Name's Lucas Hale, he finally said. I own the Hale Ranch out west. Used to know Daniel Carter. The name made everyone pause. Daniel Carter, the dead husband, had been a friend to many. A kind man with an honest heart. Lucas stepped closer, eyes on Henry. I rode with him once, years back. He saved my life from a Comanche ambush near Redstone Ridge. I owe him a debt. Henry sneered. That debt died with him. Lucas's jaw tightened. Maybe. But I'm not gonna stand by while his widow swings for something she didn't do. Evelyn stared at him, confusion and hope colliding in her chest. She'd never met this man before, or at least, she didn't think she had, but but something in his voice carried truth. The crowd shifted uneasily. No one had ever dared stand up to the Carters like this. Lucas's presence was like a storm on the horizon, quiet now, but capable of tearing everything apart. "Sheriff," Lucas said evenly, "if you've got a warrant, show it. If not, this is murder." The sheriff swallowed hard. He didn't have one. The Carters had simply demanded justice, and no one had dared refuse them. Henry stepped forward, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can walk in here and make demands? You're just another rancher, nothing more." Lucas met his glare. "Maybe. But I'm a rancher who believes in law." He turned back to Evelyn. "What really happened to your husband?" Evelyn's voice trembled as she spoke. "He got sick. The doctor said it was fever. I tried everything, boiled herbs, cool cloths, he wouldn't wake up. The night he died, I begged them to call the doctor again. But Margaret said it was my doing. They found his medicine bottle empty and blamed me." Lucas looked back at the Carters. "You checked what was in that bottle?" Henry scoffed. "What's there to check? She gave it to him." Lucas smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe someone else did." He motioned toward the sheriff. "Mind if I take a look?" The sheriff hesitated, then nodded slightly, relief flickering in his eyes. He wasn't a bad man, just a scared one. Lucas reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small vial of clear liquid. "I've seen this kind of sickness before," he said. "Rattlesnake root poisoning. Slow, cruel. It mimics fever. Whoever gave it knew exactly what they were doing." His gaze shifted to Margaret. "You've been tending the sick men, ma'am." Her eyes darted away. Yes, of course I was." Lucas tilted his head. "Strange. Because only the person handling the medicine bottle would have had access to the root." The crowd murmured louder now. The tension thickened, faces turning suspiciously toward the Carters. "You're lying," Margaret shouted, but her voice wavered. Lucas's tone hardened. "You loved your son, I don't doubt that. But you hated that he married someone poor. You hated that she had his heart when you couldn't control him anymore." Henry slammed his cane again. "Enough." But the sheriff finally found his voice. "If there's doubt," he said, "we can't hang her. Law says she gets a trial." The Gallows fell silent. Lucas took off his hat and nodded at Evelyn. "You're free, for now." As the rope was cut and her hands untied, Evelyn collapsed to her knees, sobbing. The crowd began to disperse, whispering to one another. Some offered apologies, others shamefully looked away. The Carters stood frozen, their power crumbling under the weight of their own lies. Lucas helped Evelyn to her feet. "You'll be all right," he said softly. She looked at him through tears. "Why did you help me?" His expression softened. "Because I once lost someone I couldn't save. I won't make that mistake again." In the days that followed, the truth came out. The doctor confirmed Lucas's suspicion: the fever had been caused by poisoned roots. Ones Margaret had been using in the medicine. It wasn't murder by intent, but ignorance and bitterness that had taken Daniel's life. The Carters left town in disgrace, their legacy tarnished. Evelyn stayed at Lucas's ranch for a while, working in the stables, quiet but healing. She found peace in the wide open land, the sound of horses running free under the sunset. Lucas never asked for thanks. But every morning when the sun rose over the hills, he found her standing on the porch, eyes brighter, stronger than before. And in that unspoken space between them, something began to bloom, something both had thought lost forever. Evelyn once thought her life had ended on that gallows. But sometimes, life begins again in the hands of a stranger brave enough to step forward.